about what we're doing right now. These gardens do work. We have several in the Northeast area, over 15 gardens in 7 districts, and that number is right, 2,000 pounds of produce served in 2011. We do expect an increase in 2013, and this is a project that works. It grows, it's involved in cafeteria food service, and it is going to continue to grow. So all those that have the misconception that a garden won't work in a cafeteria, you have to understand that there are many things that need to get done, but it will work. So what makes a garden efficient? The only way to have a successful garden program is to have a successful garden. Clean, well-kept, organized, and safe. Now, we're not talking commercial production for a school food service program. We all know it can't happen. We don't have the room. But a lot of times people will take a garden program and they'll grow a little bit of carrots, a little bit of lettuce. There'll be 3 or 4 bags of produce maybe in a month. If we're going to make this successful in a cafeteria, we have to be able to provide the cafeteria with food. Well and organized again. You can use an experimental bed. They're a great resource in your school. I tell everybody who grows a garden in the district, have an experimental bed, have a place for them where the kids can change the water volume, they can change the light, they can grow in partial sand or different soil types, and they can experiment. They can really see what happens when plants have different resources available to them. But make that separate from what you're going to grow for the garden cafeteria. If you mix the both, you'll lose out. So what makes a garden work in a school district? Organization. I can't be any more clear than that. You need 1 or 2 champions in place. These are your garden coordinators, people who will take this project on. They have to have buy-in and they have to be dedicated. Now, your nutrition committee in your school district, use them to your advantage. Have the garden coordinator involved in the discussions with the nutrition committee. This creates district buy-in. When there are committees involved in a school district and you have your garden coordinator there, you are in tune with what's going on. You're not hearing it from another source. And you also want to, and it's like I cannot stress this enough, connect with your food service director. Now, being one of them and working on site, I know that there is a lot of things going on in a district. I have many districts, many kitchens, and a lot of kids to feed. Keep only 1 or 2 people in direct discussion with that food service director. You can't overload them. There's already many things going on, and a garden project is a great thing, and we do want to get involved, but we want to make sure that there's limited amount of people coming into the office every day talking about the lettuce didn't show up on time or something else. Keeping an organized program and somebody directly involved with the food service director will give you a dependable model to work on. And again, I can't stress this enough. Don't take on more than you can handle. So many districts have lost garden projects over the years because one year there might be 3 or 4 people involved, and next year there might be 1. And that there's not many people working on the garden, and the garden project fails. The worst thing to see is a garden project fail. Don't take on more than you can handle. I cannot stress that enough. Did you know that your garden is partly cost sustainable? Yes. The produce that you grow can be sold to your food service management company or to the school district. It can be sold. Dollars can be generated, and they must only be used for food purchases. That means that they can't be used to buy the wheelbarrow or the tools that you need in the greenhouse or the greenhouse itself. It can only be used for food purchase. I want to make that clear. You can sell your garden produce to the cafeteria, but there's a lot of stuff involved with this. You have to make sure the process is efficient. So your garden club is a little business. The district needs to set up an account just like other booster clubs. Money has to come in and money has to go out. Take the time to create the invoices, the transfer sheets, all the forms needed. Oop, did we just lose that?
Sorry about that. I'll get us back connected.
Okay. Okay, no problem. Keep the kids involved at all times. This is an entrepreneurship program for the children. Let them create the invoices. Let them create the transfer sheets. Let them fill them out. Get them involved in this process. They are going to become little business people. This is a great part of the project, and I can't stress it enough. If your kids really want to get everything they can out of this project, becoming a little garden business is one of the great things we can do. I'm going to try to get my thing to slide again. Okay. A pilot program. This is the great tool that you need to use. Focus your energy on one school, one garden, one food service director. As I mentioned before, too many garden programs fail because there's too much at once. A great idea would be to have a business sponsorship in place at your garden, your pilot garden. That means somebody involved from the outside that has a connection to your garden. A local business, a local corporation. There's some in your area, you can find them, they're there. The more people working on your pilot program, the better chance you have at creating multiple gardens in your district, and that's the point of all this. It's not going to work with, one garden will work, but you will become a more powerful program if you have more than one garden involved in your district. Together as a community, you can make this project work. And a friend of mine and a business partner, Lisa Lensgold, is a perfect example of this. She's done incredible things in Norwalk, Connecticut, and I'd like to hand it over to her right now.
Thanks, Bill. Bill, are you going to maintain control of the slides?
I will.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lensgold. I'm the director of Norwalk Grows, located in Norwalk, Connecticut. Norwalk Grows began in July of 2010, and it's and continues to be a partnership between the Norwalk Children's Foundation and the Norwalk Public Schools. And we have about, just to give you some idea of what the size of our district, we have about 11,000 students in 19 schools, and we have gardens right now in 12 schools. So that's about 63% or so of our students are exposed to gardens at the time. And part of the motivation for creating gardens in our school is to help kids choose healthier options. And I just wanted to give you a snapshot of the type of obesity numbers that we're looking at as far as childhood obesity in Norwalk. And this is, as it is in most of the country, a big concern for ours. So we continue to monitor these numbers, and we're hoping that, together with a lot of the partnerships that we've started in our city, we will be able to make some headway into those numbers. Our typical garden model, we're actually very strict about this, because it's actually worked for us. Each school garden must establish a school garden committee before we'll even break ground on a garden. And a school garden committee has to have at least one administrator, one teacher, one parent, and at least one student. Most of them are a little larger. The high schools, the middle schools, they'll have more students than teachers and such, because we want them to own the garden. Once we break out ground on our garden, the garden becomes the school's. So we will work with them, but we're really strict about making sure that this school garden committee is successful. Additionally, what Norwalk Grows does is we pair each school with a corporate partner. And this corporate partner, we hope, will grow along with the garden and will become a corporate partner in many other ways within the school. The corporate partner usually will provide volunteer support for the installation, and in many ways has also provided financial support for the school related to their gardens. As I said before, we've installed 12 gardens. And these are some of the corporate partners that we've worked really well with. Pepperidge Farm and GE have actually been unbelievable partners for us. And then once the garden is working and functional and successful, Norwalk Grows will then work with the school to begin programming options. And one of the programs that we are piloting is the garden to cafeteria concept, which we're set to begin our pilot this spring in one of our schools. Another one of our programs, very successful program, is our Youth Farmers Market program, where the children are basically working through the summer, growing produce in their school garden, and then the same students then have a youth farmers market at the school site. So that's another way that we use our gardens in our schools. The big part of what we believe makes Norwalk Grows successful is our collaboration. And as you can see here, we have one of our volunteers from Pepperidge Farm helping the kids sow some seeds on an installation day. And our corporate partnerships are crucial. And other partnerships that we worked on and continue to nurture are our partnership with our health services, so that those are all the wellness committees that are in our schools and at the district level. So we work on building those. Another crucial partnership for us has been our health department. And Bill has actually, along with Whitson's and Bill, have been really successful in getting our health department involved and buy-in as far as sanitation, things like that, as far as our school garden program is concerned. We worked with our Recreation and Parks Department on our community garden level, and we're actually going to be using their greenhouse space to start our seeds for the school garden program for the cafeteria. We work with our Chamber of Commerce regularly to sort of expand our corporate partnerships and keep them involved in our program. And last but not least, our growing partnership is with our food service provider. And with that, I'll pass it over to Bill.
Thanks, Lisa. So we have a garden, we have some produce. Are using a harvest schedule. That's how you menu integrate, and I think that's really important. It's a big question people want to ask is, how do I get the produce into the menu? Well, I need to have a harvest schedule first. I need to know when this product is coming out. I want to make sure I have the right vegetables, and I have to understand and make the school aware that schedules are not written in stone. They're not. We all know about die-off and weather and everything else, but I want you to take a look at a quick planning schedule. If you could see, this is what we use. We have an indoor and outdoor seating program at one of our schools, Tuckahoe on the east end of the island, and here's a great example. You have harvest dates, you have transplant dates, you have succession seeding dates. It gives you the food service director needs to know when this produce will be coming out. If you can give them a schedule, and again, we all know that sometimes it's going to vary a little bit, but if you give them a schedule, they're going to be more apt to use your produce. Get the kids involved. Harvest to washing to packing. They should have their hands in all of it. Here's the kids picking produce. But what about sanitation? Now, based on county regulations, that's who's going to tell you who dictates the sanitation regulations for your school. Speak to the Department of Health directly. There's a great link right here from the National Food Service Management Administration. You'll have it on there. We'll have it at the end. That's a great link. It tells you, gives you a great rundown for the Department of Health and what they're going to ask. Children can wash, and in most cases, they can wash, but in most cases, under the supervision of someone with a food sanitation permit. That's a local regulation. So somebody who has a food service permit has to monitor the children washing the lettuce, but it's really important that you get them involved. And again, follow the guidelines. But once I have the produce, it must be packed away. I can't just willy-nilly put it in a pan. And here's where the link to food service again, where you have to understand. Take my produce. Food service directors don't want 2 pounds of lettuce at once. They need you to give them the produce in the same form they currently purchase. That's really important. Have a food service bin. Have a color safe. Have a food safe bin. If your director is getting mesclun greens at 3 pounds, then give them 3 pounds. If they're getting a 5-pound box, give them 5 pounds. You want to make this transition easy. You don't want to throw the food service workers off by giving them 1.5 pounds of lettuce in the morning and then trying to throw some more lettuce at them at 11 o'clock in the afternoon at that point. You can't do it. You want to make sure there's a process. The harvest date, the packing dates, you want to make sure that everything is aligned with your discussions. You don't want to throw something at the food service director. Here's a great example. We have the spinach packed in a 3-pound bag. Our kids harvest the same amount, and we've weighed this out before, and we're using a food-safe bin, and if you can't see it, but it's labeled. It's labeled with the harvest date, the time, and also the temperature. I want to make sure that I'm showing the children that food safety comes also with temperature logs, and we're making sure the kids know about that. We have a lettuce salad spinner. If you don't have one of those, please get one. They are so useful in your program, but as you can see, it has to be in the same form that your food service director is getting the produce in. Here's a great picture. One of our workers just taking that same produce and making our to-go salad. So it does work. It has been used in the programs. There's a great picture. Our Freight Express, our to-go salad, all done up nice. It looks great. It's presentable. And again, It's local produce. The kids picked that the day before. Can't get any better than that. Menu integration. So again, I want to make sure we use the harvest schedule. We properly process the produce in bins with temperature regulation. They're labeled and they're dated. Did you menu the item? Did you stick to schedule? Does the district and the food service director know about a die-off? Again, you want to make sure the food service director has time to make up the difference if you're providing them produce. If you said you're going to provide 5 pounds and you can only get 3, give them the time to make sure they can order the rest for their menu. If that produce is just like what the cafeteria workers get every day, you will see that produce in the cafeteria. Trust me when I tell you. If it's in the same form and it's readily available and it's there for them and it's labeled and it follows all the regulations I just spoke about, they will put it in the cafeteria. And again, I can't stress it again, promote the item. Make sure that item's in there. Top 5 produce items. Greens, mesclun, spinach, romaine. Carrots are great. Squashes, all types. I love basil because it's very expensive right now, and pesto is incredibly useful in the kitchen. And I love beet chips personally, so that's one of my favorites. And I get the kids to make the beet chips. I want to talk quickly about GAP. GAP's important. Your school garden is not GAP certified. It's a costly process, but you can have a well-written program that you write up yourself, talking about potable water, food safety issues. You can have a GAP-type program, GAP-type system in place, but it's not going to be GAP certified. That's okay. Most districts will accept the fact that you have a program that is following food safety and sanitation regulations. Do you have entry logs for those in the gardens? Limited access. These are all important things when it comes to safety of the food. And again, I want a paperwork trail for all produce. I want temperature logs, harvest dates, invoices, transfers. I want a record of the die-off. If I can have a paperwork trail for everything, it's much more valuable. I want to also show you that if we had a die-out, we use squash. Use menus correctly. Be flexible. Kid-friendly recipes. Get the kids involved. Have them do a recipe day. Have them get involved in the process from the start to the end. You can showcase this produce. You can have chef-sponsored days. There are a lot of things you can do. Promotion is key. Let the district, let the community know that you're harvesting that produce and you're using it in the cafeteria. That kind of buy-in, that kind of connection will make sure that your garden program will be successful in the future. And I just want to thank everyone for their time.
Thank you so much, Bill and Lisa. That was a really great presentation. And I see we have a number of questions here already. So we'll just start going through some of these. And if you have a question that you haven't asked yet, you can go ahead and type it into the questions panel, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. I have a question here from someone who wants to know about engagement with teachers. And this is a little different from the cafeteria topic, but at most of the schools that you work with, have teachers built the garden into their curriculum?
Yes, absolutely. The garden program, because there's so many different, using experimental beds, using an entrepreneurship program where the children can write up the invoices and the packing sheets and the time temperature logs, there's so many different levels at which this operates. Biology, business and marketing, you know, health and wellness. There are so many teachers in your district, in your school, that will want to have access to something that allows them to create curriculum that the kids can be engaged in. It's our job to let them know about it. So myself, or I have some of our garden coordinators speak directly to the science department head and say, we have a garden. You know, we have 10 feet of bed space for you to come down and experiment all you want. If you want to change, if you want to have, change the water, if you want to change the soil amendments, and monitor the plants. There is so much for them to do, but it's our job to communicate to those department heads, and then that'll filter down.
And I have a comment here from one of our state leads, Chris Kirby in Oklahoma. She says that it might be worth looking at the 2009 policy memo that USDA FNS released that says school food authorities can use their funds to also help with garden tools, fertilizer plants, etc., as long as the sale of the food goes back to the school food service account. So that 2009 policy memo from USDA FNS might be something that attendees want to Google or look up on the USDA website later. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that, Bill.
Yeah, that has changed. I just try. I know a lot of people ask me that question. We talked about people buying soil and everything else. For us, I always make sure that whatever purchase items, if the produce is purchased directly into the cafeteria, that money goes back directly into the garden program. Usually, there is some type of foundation account set up, and I get involved with that. We go over yearly budgets and processes like that. And if there is, I try to make sure that we have a lot of those seeds purchased. We have the bins purchased the right way if things break. I really want to make sure that stuff is purchased the right way. And there is the ability for people to use that money for repairs, even on hoses and stuff like that. It's just one of those things where you want to involve more than one person in the conversation. So whoever's part of the garden program, they have that monthly meeting or that yearly meeting about the garden, and you get people involved. You don't just, we want to make sure that there's many players involved in the decision about how the money's spent. Otherwise, you run into problems.
Sure, absolutely. And just and a related note to that, Chris, as I said, is our state lead in Oklahoma. The National Farm to School Network actually has state leads in all 50 states, and we have regional lead agencies that we work with as well. So I'm sure as I look through the rest of these questions that we're going to have a few questions and comments that are really easiest to answer on the local level, and especially issues of food safety, which I know that you've addressed some. But we always recommend also that in addition to the resources that Bill mentioned, that you contact your state lead, your farm to school state lead, and you can find an entire map with contact information links on our website, farmtoschool.org. Chris and our other experts like her out there have a lot of information about local policy that that we can't possibly cover even if our webinar was much longer than 20 minutes, just because it's so diverse. But I have another question here, and I think this one is probably geared towards what Lisa was talking about regarding partnerships. Have you run into any conflicts of interest when you seek partners at the schools that you work with? For example, with Pepperidge Farm, or I know that some schools have sometimes raised a flag about partnering with organizations that they see as not having a sustainability mission that matches their own. Is that something you've had to deal with? And if so, how did you get around it or work with it?
I understand, as you were saying, Pepperidge Farm, I was smiling because I often joke around with them as far as bringing Milano cookies to installations and whatnot. We haven't had any conflicts as far as who has come onto our program and their interests, and as far as their businesses go. I could imagine how that could happen, but it isn't an experience that we've had. Even though, companies may have a conflict of interest as far as childhood obesity or whatnot may go, they are trying to do good in our community, and that's where our focus is on our community. So if they're willing to help, then we're happy to have them.
Thanks, Lisa. And this might be a question for both of you. What are some of the vegetables and fruits that you see growing well in greenhouses specifically? And also, what are some of the most successful things to grow on this slightly bigger scale to work into a cafeteria?
I think lettuce greens are by far the easiest and the most costly item to put into a menu. They're so versatile. There's so many different types. So many kids don't get to see the variety of lettuce. They're used to just seeing an either iceberg or romaine in a school program. Sometimes they'll see a mesclun mix. But there are many, many, many different types of lettuce. Arugula is one of those lettuces that a lot of kids they don't have any experience with. And you can grow that inside a greenhouse. We've done a lot of work with lettuce where the kids are coming in and we're doing Mizuna greens. We're doing just so many different types. They don't know what it is. And there's another connection to the type of food that we want our children to consume is this fresh grown produce. So lettuces work incredibly well in a greenhouse. You can stack a greenhouse full of lettuce. If you have a multi-rack, if you have the ability to create a multi-rack system, then you're just, creating that much more growing space. So I tell people, go with lettuce. It's the easiest thing to start out with. You can use, if you don't have a greenhouse, a lot of them don't, but you can use cold frames, you can use hoop houses. These are simple pieces of technology that the kids can build with you. I do it all the time. It's so easy to make a hoop house, but it allows the children to see produce growing in times when they don't normally see it, and it gives you more versatility when it comes to if there is a die-off, if you have some beds that are covered and away from the outside elements. It just gives your program a little bit more variety. So greens, 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 greens. Herbs are great too because they grow quickly. They can be used in a variety of programs. Again, pesto is an easy thing for kids to make. It's so easy to do, but it's so flavorful, and you can put it on anything and eat it. And it's you could do different types of herbs that kids aren't even really used to. I mean, they've seen rosemary, but fresh oregano. Sometimes I see kids that don't even know what fresh oregano is, and it's an easy item to grow. So use those quick growing items. The kids get to see it, they get to snip it and eat it, and then a week later come back and eat it again. I think that's a great impact, and it allows you to kind of fill up your garden, your salad bar quickly too.
That's great advice. I'm switching gears here back to food safety. What does GAP stand for, and can you elaborate a little on what GAP is?
GAP is good agricultural practices, and in the school food world, most schools contract, or being part of the National Lunch Program, they're supposed to follow guidelines, the USDA guidelines, and there have to be grades of produce, grades of farmers get grades for the food that they produce. So produce has a grade on it. Now that is a USDA approved or certified farm. That farm follows GAP practices. GAP audits cost money. So that's one of the speed bumps right now in our local procurement, and Farm to School's working incredibly on this right now. That's how a lot of farmers can't sell to schools because they're not GAP certified. GAP certification costs a lot of money, and it's a process that takes a while, and you have to keep up with it. So when I talk about GAP, I know that we're not going to have a school garden that's going to be GAP certified, but what we can do is we can file GAP guidelines. And that just means that we show the school district that we're using potable sources of water, we're using organic amendments, we're not adding chemicals or fertilizer to the soil. The soil has been tested. Your local Department of Ag and Farm to School can give you so many resources on testing soil before you start the building of the raised beds and everything. All this in place, written down and presented to the district, gives them much more flexibility when it comes to approving this produce source. If I just put a raised bed down in the middle of a courtyard and started growing produce and just told the school district, I'd like you to, let's sell this produce to the food service program, I'm not going to be able to do it. I have to follow guidelines from the very beginning, and that's the power. That's where this program really, it requires a lot of buy-in from the district, and it requires people from the other side continuously following guidelines, making sure things are processed efficiently, forms are filled out, again, like I said, time temperature logs, harvest dates are followed, the produce is washed correctly. So there's a lot of things that they don't get in the way of a garden program. They're requirements for you to follow. And once you have them laid out and you follow them correctly, then your program will work.
Here's another one thing to note. It's good to remember that GAP certification is not required for inclusion in school food meal programs. Although I know that some local, some local school districts might have their own rules, but it's not a requirement, right? It's just right. Yeah. It's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation, and some school districts, depending on your, again, this is locality, depending on where you are, some districts will mention that they want to have GAP certification. So it's part of the discussion. It's part of our garden coordinators getting involved with the district and asking, and then reminding the district also that they're following great guidelines, that that this process has been done before. It's been done all over the country. It's going to be done here, and we're going to follow those regulations. And again, I think that's where a lot of school districts will want to they'll buy into the program if they see that there's someone involved in this program that is efficient, that has the answers, that follows the guidelines, that looks at all the angles, and they feel better about it. So it's one less thing for the district to say, we're going to think about it. We don't know if this is going to work. When you have those laid out in front of them, there's really nothing for them to say.
That's a great point. And a question for you, Lisa. How do you work with, in the gardens you work with, how do you work with community volunteers? And do you do anything in the way of a background check before they're allowed to work in the school gardens?
We do. The city actually has all the. It has to be done through the city, so all the background checks have to be done through the city. As far as our volunteers go, we will take volunteer. Usually, parents who are from the school will volunteer with their classrooms, and most certainly, none of our volunteers are ever without a certified teacher or someone associated with the school in the garden. A lot of the times, the kids will come to the garden during recess as an alternative to their recess. They'll come over and work in their garden. So there's lots of people out there. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. And how, and in the schools that both of you work with, are kids being engaged in the food preparation side of things at all?
I can tell you a lot of districts that I work with have started recently or have in place some type of culinary arts program, and integration is absolutely key. A lot of the times the garden's going to be, picked by some of the younger kids, elementary school and middle school, because that's a lot of times you can get, kids are excited about it. Some of the high school kids, they won't get excited about it unless they're part of a culinary arts program. But the culinary arts program, the high school kids can really, mix with the middle school and elementary school kids, and that kind of partnership is incredible in a district. And the buildup of culinary arts recently, with all the programs and all the things on TV, there's a lot of buzz about it. So creating that connection again is so key with some of the kids that are in high school, some of the quote-unquote cooler kids that the younger kids would look up to. Yeah, if there's a culinary arts program, absolutely get involved. Ask about recipes, talk about menu integration, ask, let's have a produce sponsored day, or let's have a lettuce day, or anything to again promote the idea that the produce grown in the school is going to be used in the cafeteria, and you're going to be able to eat it. So anything that can promote that whole process is going to really help you.
And we always, just to get back to that, and as far as our volunteers go as well, we use a lot of peer-to-peer tutoring in our programs, and we actually have one of our gardens is a mentor garden, and that is between one of our high schools and our elementary schools, and they share garden space. So we use a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring and culinary arts students in the elementary school, and they're an underused asset that we really try to use as much as possible.
And what about the summertime? What do you do with garden produce and your garden in general throughout the summer months? Do you have a program to keep it active, or do you kind of put the garden to bed?
A lot of programs that I've worked with, we try to get involved with Lisa has a youth farmers market. Farmers markets are great resources for the community and as well as your garden program. Of course, you want to make sure that the garden is maintained in the summertime. A properly organized garden program or garden club at your school will allow that to happen, where there's some teachers involved, some parents, some food people, maybe even a local restaurant. That
you have to have it.
Yeah, you have to have it.
You have to have it.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people in your community that will be part of your project. You have to search them out. Being involved with some local restaurants, local chefs, I'm absolutely sure you can find a couple in your community that you could say, is there any way that you can maybe use this lettuce in a program and promote the fact that there's a school garden and we're using it in the cafeteria program during the school year? Absolutely. It's those connections that make the difference, and they don't come, they don't just come out of the sky. You have to search them out. So a proper garden program, volunteer schedules. You know, I look at it again on a business level. Is there a labor schedule? Do we have schedules during the summertime? Are people committed? Do you have someone saying, I'll give you 3 hours a week or 3 hours a month when it comes in the summertime? Absolutely. If those things are, again, if it's a process, if we have a schedule, if we have commitments from people, if we have local community members, it can get done. It's just, you know, will you set up that program from the beginning in the correct way?
Just to soften that up a little bit, as far as school communities go, you know, we use it as a chance for our kids to be able to reconnect to their classmates. We'll host different nights of the week. We'll have different grades come up to the school, do some maintenance, and then whatever they want to pick, whatever's ready to harvest that night, they can take home and enjoy with their family. Or some grades will have picnics at school that night. So we kind of use it to keep the school community going over the summertime. But you know, you have to be, what we've learned is you need to be sensitive to every school community, and not every school community is the same. And the school garden committee, working with them to make sure that they have a maintenance schedule that is conducive to their school community. In some instances, you may need to have to hire, you know, maybe summer help. You know, a lot of cities, small cities, will have mayor's programs that'll have work programs through the summertime. Maybe you can get a corporate sponsor who can hire one of those summer workers for the summer. And some schools just, you know, don't have the resources. We've used also some of the summer camps that are at our schools. They'll utilize the garden in the summertime as well. So you need to be creative.
And I have 2 additional comments on top of the great insight from Bill and Lisa. We did a webinar on this very topic, actually, about what to do with your school garden during the summer. And you should be able to find it archived on our website at farmtoschool.org. So you might look into that if that's something of real interest to you. And I think it's something of real interest to all school gardeners. It's a really common question that we get. And on the topic of community resources, we have a comment here from one of our attendees who says to remember and look into the Junior Master Gardeners programs that are located throughout the U.S., as well as adult Master Gardeners who might be willing in many communities to work with schools and kids and can be a great resource. Also, remember to look into your county extension offices and their staff in horticulture and family and consumer science, and their staff working in food safety. They are a great resource for many aspects of your garden program. And let's see, and another comment here, just in general, we have a lot of questions about whether or not these resources will be archived. They definitely will. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. The slides will also be posted there. And here's a question that's a little bit unique and has to do with policy. One of our attendees wants to know, if we want to encourage garden programs in communities, what should we advocate for on a policy level? And I'm actually going to ask if we have another staff person on the line, Mary Stein, if she would be interested in answering that one for us and mentioning the policy aspect to all of this.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chelsea. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. That's a great question, and a really important question in terms of what can be done on the local level to advocate for policies that make sense and support school garden initiatives. I would say 2 things come to mind immediately, and one is that to advocate for food safety regulations that make sense. Regulations that ensure food safety but aren't unduly burdensome to small producers or safe garden projects. And it was very apparent to me here that our presenters today really demonstrated what a sound food safety plan for a garden project is. So it doesn't need to be a full-blown GAP certified endeavor, but having a nice solid food safety plan associated with the garden is one that should be acceptable to the local food safety regulatory bodies. The other policy thing that I think is really important is that every school district that participates in the school meals program has a school wellness policy in place. And advocating for inclusion of some language in your district's school wellness policy that supports farm-to-school initiatives and school garden projects is a great way of really moving these efforts forward. So those are the two things I have to share.
That's really helpful, Mary. Thanks so much for chiming in on that. And on a slightly related note, as far as just getting things going and advocating in your community, what are some of the early steps that a person can do to convince your food service director that a farm to school program is both important and needed? Might be a question for anyone.
I mean, I'll just comment on that briefly. I think the goal would be to allow the food service director in on this process. So if we can start off, if the garden program champion can start off with a sound schedule, some produce ideas, talk about menu integration. Again, connect with the food service director in the way that you understand that they have 7 elementary schools and 15 kitchens and 85 employees. And you want to make sure that you're, to assume that you can just throw something on their shoulders and they're going to take care of it because it's a great idea, that's where a lot of it gets lost. So if you can understand and connect with them in the way that you appreciate the work that they do, and you want to make this transition very easy, and you want to set it up for them so that you can say, I want to provide you with fresh grown produce so that you can serve it in your cafeterias, you can promote those items, you can be connected to children's nutrition in a way that before you haven't. And we're going to set it up in a way that it's going to be easy for you. I'm going to give you these packs of produce in the same way that you get them from your local distributor. And they're going to look the same way. It's going to be the same weight, and you're going to use it just like you do with everything else. But the difference is that this is grown, 150 feet away by the kids. And they're going to notice that too. And once you have that produce day in your cafeteria, that's when you'll see the difference.
And on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up, but I do want to let everyone know that if you're in the early stages of planning your farm to school program, we do have some resources available on our website. If you'd like to send me an email at chelsea@farmtoschool.org, we have some fact sheets and some other things that I can email you directly just to make it easier to find on that very topic. And we also have some resources related to getting a garden started specifically. And I'd be happy to email those out to anyone who's interested. And of course, this webinar will be archived, as I mentioned before. I just want to thank you all for attending, and especially to thank Bill and Lisa for taking the time to give us this great presentation today and answer so many fabulous questions. I think you've really helped enrich this conversation about integration of the school garden program for a number of people today.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.